The North Pole is perhaps the most mysterious place on our planet, just because it's a place that does not exist. This is not a piece of land. It's a notional point, a point on the sea of ice. It's amazing that despite all the inhospitality, the North has always beckoned. Although these beauties cost the lives of many brave souls, the pioneer of these places, seafarer William Barents, died tragically in the cold waters of the sea, which was later named in his memory. But the North Pole is just a stone's throw away from here. Well, just some 3 flights in 10 hours, and we are on the northernmost archipelago on the planet Earth. We are on Spitsbergen, guys. On the northernmost inhabited one, to be clear, there is also Franz Josef Land, but nobody lives there all year round, and here they do. Right next to the luggage carousel, the owner of the land welcomes the newcomers, the polar bear. Because there are even more bears than people here on Spitsbergen. Well, it's time to look around. Where are we this time? Longyearbyen, the capital of Spitsbergen, cannot even be called a small town in the mainland standards. The population of this largest northern settlement is only 2,144 people. They don't even lock up the bicycles left on the street. They are up for grabs, but they just do not steal because everyone knows each other. They don't lock the doors, cars, and the houses themselves stand on piles because of permafrost. 10 months a year, the land is covered with snow, so snowmobiles are just right for this weather. There are also many sled dogs here, but cats are forbidden here because of rabies. But in general, you do not feel cut off. There is a souvenir shop here with a polar bear at the entrance, of course, 2 groceries, a couple of restaurants, and a couple of hotels. In total, there are several dozens of squat houses along one central street, which is called the street. And this is the central square of Longyearbyen, and of course there is a monument to the miner here. Well, simply because it was these people who founded this city exactly 110 years ago. The only thing left of miners here is the habit of taking off shoes when entering the room. At that time, Longyearbyen looked like this. In 1906, this guy, American John Longyear, started coal mining operations here, and later he sold the mine to the Norwegians. But after a century, Arctic mineral extraction has exhausted itself. It was simply unprofitable. Today, there is only one mine near Longyearbyen, mostly serving the needs of the town itself. But despite the modern civilization of this place, the very place lays its own, sometimes very strange laws. In Longyearbyen, dying is prohibited by law. Even the pensioners are packed off to the mainland. All this is due to the fact that here any burial inevitably attracts polar bears. And this is the only cemetery. Here lie the 35 best town representatives who were honored enough to stay here on Spitsbergen. But they were all cremated in order to not attract polar bears. The reason is permafrost. In these polar regions, it extends 600 meters deep and can preserve anything that gets into it in its original form. So why not take advantage? In the depths of, not the Siberian mines, but the permafrost of Spitsbergen, right under my feet, lies a real treasure. This is a global seed vault, a sort of Noah's Ark for all plants of the planet Earth in case of a global catastrophe. From this entrance, the tunnel goes 120 meters deep into the mountain, so that in its cold depths, 4.5 million future sprouts of life could be eternally stored. 3 times a year, replenishment comes to Spitsbergen from around the world. Then this car runs up the mountain, and only then the doors of the depository open. Boxes with seeds are transported down a 100-meter tunnel through 5 different doors, which are unlocked with 5 different keys. There are also CCTV cameras and motion sensors, and these walls can withstand any earthquake. In the storage chamber, the seeds are cataloged, and then they finally take their place on the shelf. Unlike other seed banks, this storage is international and, by the way, the most trouble-proof. There is an additional generator here, but it only lowers the temperature a few degrees, but the natural frost carries out the bulk of the work to preserve the seeds. At -18, the grains can be stored for at least several centuries. Such a funny paradox story. Permafrost would usually seem to harm plants, but here on Spitsbergen, on the contrary, it helps. That's a kind of eternal refrigerator. But for the Arctic flora itself, the local severe climate is, of course, a harsh challenge. Even in the polar summer, the temperature on Spitsbergen is rarely more than 5 degrees Celsius. Therefore, the plant kingdom is not very diverse. Not a desert, of course, but a low tundra. And yet, the climate of the Arctic Gate, that's what they call Spitsbergen, is actually quite mild, thanks to the Gulf Stream. This warm Atlantic current reaches the Barents and Kara Seas and washes the archipelago from 2 sides. Therefore, even in winter, the temperature is rarely less than -20 degrees Celsius, although the distance to North Pole is less than from Moscow to Ufa. And on June 8, 2016, it is all 10 degrees Celsius.
But this is one of the warmest days this year, so we're pretty lucky. Yeah.
Oh, we're lucky.
The position of Carl Jansen does not have an accurate translation in Russian aviation. In fact, he is everyone in the northernmost civil airport, from ensuring flights to passenger check-in, and he has seen a lot in his 5 years here.
It's very easy to tell about last winter. We had a tragic avalanche in downtown Longyearbyen. And we had an extremely hard weather, extremely hard storm. And during that night we had a very sad avalanche, and 8 people were hidden by snow, or were covered, and 2 died, unfortunately.
Spitsbergen is where cold polar air and mild, wet sea air meet, creating strong winds in winter and low visibility in summer. The archipelago was even called an island of fogs. And yet the northernmost airport works rain and shine.
What we do, we heat up sand and moisturing it, and then we put it on the very cold surface. And when the sand hits the ground, hits the ice, it will stick very hard, and you will have a sandpaper surface, which is very good for the braking action for airplanes.
But for flights to Longyearbyen, the airlines assign only the best pilots. This is not subject to aviation regulations, but not everyone can land here.
When you have the in-flight from the west, you see you have the in-flight period from over the sea. That makes it easier. When you come in from east, from that direction, you have more what you are saying. That makes it a little bit more difficult, and it makes this airport at Svalbard one of the most difficult.
The Arctic is a very strange place. I did not get infected with it, but it has certainly left an impression on me. You feel like a tourist here. Moreover, in more ways than one. First, there are really lots of tourists here. 140,000 people come here every year because it's much easier to get here now. But secondly, this land itself shows you that it is impossible to live here permanently. There is no place for man in the middle of the ice. Here, you feel small and insignificant like nowhere else. After all, this landscape has not changed for millions of years. But the most bitter thing is that it can change beyond recognition in the next 5 decades. Because in the 21st century, not an ice is the hostile environment, but men.